Hello ladies, I'm Mrs. Sherman and I have a blog I'd like you to go to and leave a comment. I don't have comments on my video channel because I am making these videos for my blog and I don't want to monitor too many things on in the web. So please go over there and also check out the other homemakers on my sidebar on my beautiful blog roll of lovely blogs. And I'm making this video and others with it to help support homemakers so that they can work or manage their homes or clean or do something and listen as they work. You know, I just love to put in a video and listen to it in the background if I've got a huge amount of things to do that are rather repetitive or difficult. It always helps to have some company. I know my children used to sit on chairs and in the kitchen and talk to me or read to me while I was doing something that they couldn't reach or they couldn't do themselves, maybe cleaning, loading the dishwasher, unloading it. If you have something to fold, if you have something to sort, if you have a room to clean up, if you have something to do that requires that you need both hands, but you don't want to watch something, you know, I just love to watch beautiful videos that these wonderful homemakers make of making something, decorating, cleaning. I love to watch it, but it takes time. I have to stop and see what they do. So I'm hoping that you won't sit here and look at me. I hope that you will just use me as background company while you work. It's nice to have support, isn't it? And this is a support video for women at home or who want to be at home because you know we're all rather isolated. Now I'm not saying that in a bad way because we have to be isolated in order to get our homemaking done, in order to conduct our homes and our families and take care of our children. This is something that is not done in a group. It's impossible to do it in a group. You have to have the isolation. But it can be a little bit daunting because you don't know quite if there are others like you around, and so this is nice to have some kind of company. And I have waited almost 10 days to get to the point where I could come out here and talk to you. I'm in Oregon on beautiful farmland, and my husband's a preacher, and I have set up in the background, as you can see, we've just had a get together for ladies. I've left a few things out for you to see, and I'm dressed up today. And one of the things I'd like to stress for you as you go along, and as I said, I only have a few things to show you, and then you can get on with your work and just use me as background noise. But I am wearing today a bright rose-colored blazer that I bought in Australia about 10 years ago, and at Big W, which is similar to our Walmart, and I just don't want to part with it. I love the way the sleeves were rolled up with the lining showing, and I don't want to give it up yet, although it's showing a lot of wear. And with it, I have a teacup that I bought there from a company called Ashdean, which is Australian, and I love it's dishwasher safe, microwave safe, and I love the print on it. It's not too light out here or too bright, so might have a little trouble with this video being a little bit faded. I have waited a long time to come out here because I had so much to do indoors. We had a beautiful tea with some ladies and some of the granddaughters, and they dressed up in the costumes. You know, I have costumes in the back of the hall hanging on a hanger and that's the first thing they go to is to go get those costumes on when they come. And then we have a tea party. And so I've left the table up, and I'll show you a picture later of what it looked like. And as the light fades, I hope that the candle lights will flicker back there and you can see it. And you're not supposed to be watching, but you can stop now and then see how that's going. I live in a beautiful countryside, and so why not celebrate it and dress for it and compliment it? And it is so sad to see that ladies have waited their whole life in jeans and leggings and sweatshirts, not feeling pretty, not looking pretty, and I believe that they could have done more to be worthy of what they have around them. And we live in a beautiful state. You know, those of you who are looking in from another country, I need to explain to you that when you meet an American, they're not just an American like all Americans. Everyone is from a state, and the state is a little country. And so Oregonians and Washingtonians and Californians, we're all different. We have different scenery. We have different weather. We have a different culture in each state. And one particular state, which I think is just full of culture, is Texas, for example. They have managed to take somewhat of a barren land and turn it into a rich culture. And so every state is independent, and states' rights, as far as political policy goes, states' rights are more important than the national rights. States' rights come first, and we're just loosely joined together into the United States. So each state is different. And when I go overseas, I always tell people I'm from Oregon because I have a different view of life than some people in other states. And we enjoy going from state to state without a passport to see what it's like and enjoy the wonderful atmosphere of every state. And we have recently been on little hour trips or day trips where we enjoy seeing Old Town America, Old Town, Small Town America, the old buildings from the 1800s. And so I would like today to talk about three things, which I usually do. And number one is getting ready, getting prepared with your appearance for your homemaking day. A lot of you say you don't know where to start. You didn't grow up with a homemaking mother. Isn't that sad? It's like it skipped a couple of generations because all of you have Victorian grandparents, all of you. You can't get out of it. No matter how much you might think poorly of the Victorian era, you all had Victorian ancestors. And those of you doing your DNA know this. You can't write off that generation. And it wasn't their fault they were in the Victorian era. That's where God put them. And they have a lot of influence even today. And I have been deeply influenced by the Victorian era. And I like to incorporate things in my life that bring that history to me and help me. I like to relive it a little bit by the way that I dress and the customs that I develop in my home. And of course by my faith, all the way back for generations. You know, I'm from a family of preachers and teachers and in the Lord's church. And one of the things that I want to talk to you about is women in the Lord's church and how they are so needed to teach Titus 2 and the idea of being home and making a career at home, of your home, not trying to earn money in a career, but having a home. And so today I'm going to talk about three things. And first of all, your appearance. Second of all, the homemaking. And thirdly, working around people, working with people, because you'll be with people at home. There might also be people that discourage you. And so we want to talk about a little bit about that. And I'm hoping that I can talk for an hour. Now, I've noticed on my stats that the average viewing time to any of my videos is 10 minutes. But there isn't supposed to be a viewing at all. It is not designed for you to sit here and watch or look. So it doesn't bother me if you're not interested. You can find something else maybe that suits you better. And this is for people who need to be working and need the background and need to hear encouragement. So that's what I'm going to do today. And so even though you might view for 10 minutes, maybe you could come back and continue and listen even more. So if you have only recently found me, then you need to know that you can leave comments, and comments are my fuel. You can also donate on my PayPal, but the comments are the thing that help me to create content. Okay, so I decided to make this listen as you work videos just because sometimes it's hard to get going, you know. I mean, maybe you had a rough night, or maybe the day before you came in from a trip and you find yourself, or maybe you've had company and you're kind of recovering, trying to get everything back together, and you just kind of don't know where to start and what do you do first. So the first thing I would say is get yourself a shower, get your hair done, get your your face done, and I have red skin. I have very red skin, and I have to cover it every morning with a little bit of coverage here. It's still, you can see it's quite red. You know, look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself what others have to look at. And I will tell you ones with little children. And by the way, I'm from the olden times. I'm pushing 70, and now that I'm looking back in retrospect, I can tell you a little bit about what your children might like, and that is they want their mother to be pretty and attractive, and somebody that they want to hold hands with, and that they want to be around. Dress brightly and beautifully for your children, and think of how tall they are. They're probably only up to your knees. What are they looking at? Are they just looking at your bare legs or your jeans? Why not put on a skirt that has pretty things on it? You know, if you go to the fabric store and go down to the nursery aisle, there are the prints. There are prints of little animals, and there's prints of little things that children love to look at. And I always remember my children liked the skirts I made that had pictures on them. And I found one time of little cottages and wore that thing to death because the children liked it so much. And one had little teddy bears on it. I think they were panda bears. And even today, one of my older children will tell me, I still loved that. I still remember that skirt. I still remember that I loved it. And they'll hang on to your skirt too. They'll hide behind it. They will. Your skirt is really important to them. You think of how you're influencing their tastes and their love for beauty. So dress for your children. Don't think they don't notice. They do. Now, in taking care of your appearance, bear in mind that the impression that you want to also give the rest of the world and the influence you're going to have as a homemaker. If you think that this is what you should be doing and that it would be nice if other women would do it too, wouldn't they like to look at a homemaker as something other than an unkempt drudge? Would you like to present a better image for homemakers? I think you can do it. And I especially think if you're a member of the Lord's church, you should do it. And so it's a pity, isn't it, in some ways, that even in among the saved, the women, they're so sincere and they love the Lord so much, but they ignore Titus 2, which teaches them to be keepers of the home and guides of the home and guards of the home, and it's a huge job. And yet, sometimes I think they forget that. And I remember one time there was a school of preaching, and there were some women that were teaching the young women whose husbands were studying to be preachers. And I asked her, can you give me some advice as how I can teach women Titus 2, the idea and the belief of being home and caring for your home and your children and teaching your own children at home and being a guide and a guard and a keeper of the home. And this older woman looked at me and said, "Oh, that Titus 2 stuff." And so even in the schools of preaching and the Christian colleges, it's sad that there are no classes for ladies at home or for women who want to be ladies at home. And it's so sad. You know, I could offer to do it, but my videos are the best training. And if you are in a Christian college and you need a class, well, here it is. So there is no way around it if you're really reading the scriptures and you're wanting to do what it says. And this is one reason that I homeschooled, is because I know that Ephesians 6 and Deuteronomy 6 almost say the same thing, and that is that the parents are to train their children and nurture them. And it's not good to turn them over to other teachers that don't have your values. Well, we noticed this even though we were homeschooling. We had music teachers, like piano teachers, that were even members of the church, and we would take our children to their house for piano lessons, and then only to find out that some of these ladies didn't believe the way we believed in many things, particularly Titus 2, and would tell our children the opposite. So you have to be really careful who you choose to be your children's mentors and teachers. And even if they're teaching math, you have to be careful that they don't influence them in other respects. Okay, so now I want to, now that you're all dressed and you have yourself looking nice and smelling nice and you're happy, I want to talk about your time being able to do that. Now, if you will get up a little bit earlier than your children, you will have time in the bathroom. You'll have time to do all this. And with homemaking, I want to say, to answer a few questions about, someone asked me some really good questions just last week about where you put things in the house, like your pots and pans and like your food and things like that. And so I'm going to just talk about that. Very early on, I figured out that I had to keep the cooking dishes, the cooking utensils, the fry pan, the pots, the pans, the kettle, everything near the stove, or what you call the hob, near the stove. So it is in the cabinet below the stove or right next to the stove. That's where all those dishes go that you would take out quickly and set it on the hot point on the stove. And that only makes sense. So, and also there's a little drawer above that. That would be where the stirring spoons and the spatulas and the things that you would need to stir the pot with, those would go in there. Now I have mine in a can, kind of looks like a milk can. It's kind of decorative, and I have mine standing up there. But the idea is put things where you are going to, near where you're going to use them. Now let's talk about your flour and your spices and your the things that you use when you cook with. Well, they should be, if it's the things that, if it is the savory items that you're going to use when you cook on top of the stove or in the oven, you would need to have those near that area too. But generally, there is a cabinet that you keep for your spices and your flours and your other ingredients, dried ingredients that are contained in containers and bottles. Those go just above, in a cabinet or shelf above the drawer where you keep the measuring spoons and the measuring cups. So you can open that cabinet, reach up, get your cinnamon, pull out your drawer, get your measuring spoon and measure it. And beneath that drawer is another cabinet. You open the door and there are your mixing bowls right there. So you keep that all lined up together. That's what you're going to do. And then beneath that there might be another shelf, and there are your pans, the ones that you would bake in. And so you stick those all together like that, and you keep it all where the nearest place where you are working. Okay, so then in another section of your kitchen you have your dishwasher. All right, that has to be below the cabinet that you put your glassware and your plates, because it's going to come straight out of the dishwasher and go right up in there. So that's what you do. You don't have things all over the place so that you have to take too many steps. So then your silverware, which is your cutlery, your forks, your spoons, your knives, that goes in a container. Now I keep a container on top of my cabinet with sections in it and all my cutlery's in that. But a lot of people have drawers and they have a little silverware container that has a little section in it for forks, knives, and spoons. And you take out out of the dishwasher, should go right there in the drawer closest to the dishwasher. Okay, that way it's not so hard. You don't want to travel clear across and put things away somewhere else. Just things as easy as you possibly can. All right, now further down your kitchen, further away from your sink and away from your stove, then you can use those drawers and things for things like your wax paper and your parchment paper and your little plastic containers with lids can go back there. You probably wouldn't be using them to mix anything with, and they're further away. And then you have a place for your towels and your dish towels, and you have another place for things like your waffle iron and your mixer. That goes further away. Those aren't things that you probably would be using all the time. Now, I have a thing about appliances. I don't like them on top of the cabinet top. They take up space, and I don't always use them. And so if you have a little shelf over on the side or in the pantry area, or even in the laundry room, you can store them anywhere. So now I want to talk a little bit about working around children. Well, wait a minute, one more thing, your refrigerator. Okay, so the refrigerator is arranged so that what you use the most you can reach for quickly. Don't stick the items that you use a lot way back on the lowest shelf or the top shelf or somewhere where you can't see it. The things that you use the most, bring them towards the front. Push the other things towards the back. And the things that are freshest, you keep those near the front because you want to use those up. We have a problem in our family because as Mr. S and I are often by ourselves, we cannot buy large quantities of juice or milk or anything like that because it will just go bad. Nobody drinks it. And but the things you want to use, you stick those up near the front. Now, if you want your husband to find something and you know that it's something that he likes, that he gets in there for, keep it where he can get it. Don't have it so far away and so complicated that they can't find them. And in the drawers, the two drawers are crispers, and they are designed to keep your lettuce and your cucumber and your salad makings crisp. It keeps, they're no joke. Those things are supposed to keep have less moisture in them. So that's what you use those for. You put your fruit and vegetables in there. Vegetables in one and fruit in the other. And so it keeps it really, it does keep it well, keeps it really fresh. So now, working around children. So we have come to working around children. If your children are clinging to you and they're not giving you any rest and they're just following you all around and they even cry when you go to the bathroom, you know what? That is a good thing. And I'll tell you why. Because you'll never have to worry about them wandering off, or never have to worry where they are, or worry that they'll go off with somebody else. If they want to be with you and they are coming around all the time, this is so good. I have seen too many children that just run off, and their parents have to catch them. They run out into the road. They're at the grocery store and they're off somewhere else. Look, be very happy that your children need you and that they want you around. The way to keep them from being too anxiously clingy is when they come around, put your arm around them and draw them close. You could be on your computer, you're typing, or you're on the phone talking to somebody. They come around, you put your arm around them because they won't have to beg for your attention. So it's very important for you to bond like that with your children. It's more important than anything, and not to worry about it. But you ought to be able to get some things done, and here's how to do it. I bought a little broom and a little tiny vacuum cleaner and little toy cleaning products, and I brought the children into every room I was in. And they worked along with me, and I didn't act. If you act irritated, they're just going to cling more because it makes them anxious. Have you ever had a friend that hung up on you? That's how kids feel when they don't feel that their mother is completely on board with them emotionally. So always be attentive and, like I said, embrace the fact that they want to be around you and take advantage of it, because you can work with them and you can teach them to help you and to work also. And this is how you do it. You bring a little doll bed into the bedroom that you're trying to make a bed, and you'll say, this is how we make the bed. You see, first we pull up this sheet, then we do this, and then we pull up the blanket. Can you do that with your doll bed? And they're all so neat and tidy. And if they have a little kitchen to play in, that's even better, because they can bring that into the kitchen while you're working there. And you can take your children with you as you go. And please remember that the more anxious they are, it means that they sense in some way that you're brushing them aside or that you feel irritated. Somehow they pick up on your muscle tension. I don't know. But be very glad that they want to be that way. This could be used for something great. And you can get a lot done. You really can. And they can be, just make sure they're coming on board with you. And that if I wish I could read a poem to you that I read many years ago, and it was in the original art literature readers. Now those I think are out of print, but it was about a mother with her children, and they were all kind of dancing around, and she was just holding their hands. They were dancing around, and she said, "They and I are wrought together." I don't know if you want to look up that word wrought. It means they're wound up together. They have a heart that is the same. So I can talk to you more about this later. I'm very reluctant to talk about training children because I've always warned women not to go to books to learn to train their children, because you will develop the prejudice of the author, and you also don't know what their children are like, and you need to know somebody personally. Probably do better off just to use your instincts and your parents. Um, and so, but I would say love them and show it, and you will find that you will get a lot more done. And even with little ones, I remember getting a chair up there and letting them help me wash the dishes by hand, or let them play in a, I know a lot of people just don't want to go to the trouble, but you get them a little plastic pan of water, put a towel on the floor, put the pan of water on a chair, a little chair, let them stand there and wash dishes while you wash dishes, or let them observe you washing dishes. But if you will include them, that will definitely help. I would like to talk a little bit more about it later on. And so I wanted to talk about the idea of them observing that mother, first of all, that mother is beautiful, mother likes to be pretty, and we want to look nice too. Mother likes to have the home neat and tidy. Mother likes to make the bed, and mother likes to make bread, and we want to like that too. This is so important for the children, because their first impression that they are going to get from about life and about the home is going to be from you and from your attitude. I'm just looking to see if those candles are flickering yet. It's not quite dark enough. I've spoken now for almost 30 minutes, and I hope that you'll pause it when you have to stop and do something else, but you'll come back and it'll be very helpful for you. Now, so we want to now leave that subject of the children right now, and it doesn't take long for me to bring back the memory of what it's like. When my children bring their children home and they've got to go out and do something, and they have appointments, and I have the children, then I remember how I used to juggle trying to get some things done. You definitely have to do the laundry and the dishes and clean up the floors and things like that. You might let a bed go, but the things that are necessary for them to live in a sanitary environment and to have nutritious food and cleanliness and that sort of thing, and you've got to get them their baths, and you've got to change them and all these things, and at the same time keep your mind on accomplishing a goal. So you have to be interruptible. Now, being interruptible means that you have a list in your mind of what you need to do, but it's okay to be interrupted. You have to stop, you have to tie a shoe, you have to wipe a nose, you have to put a band-aid on somebody, you have to help somebody find something. A child will come to you and say, where is that, particular toy that they're missing, and you've got to stop and go help them. But you keep a focus in your mind of going back to that job, and you just continue it. You just let a little break come along, but you go back to it, and you have persistence. You have persistence, and you have endurance. And you cannot give up and just say, forget it, I'm just going to sit in a chair because they won't let me do anything. You have a persistence. It's like a train that has to stop and pick people up. Well, it doesn't give up. It shuts the door and then continues on the journey, and then it has to stop and let somebody out. So that's the way you are. You're just consistent and persistent. That's so important. You might want to look those two words up too and see what they mean. So getting ready is important too. That's another thing. You might be half ready, maybe dressed but not your hair done, and somebody needs something. You just stop and do it, but you keep in the back of your mind or the front of your mind, that's going to be my next thing that I do when I'm able to. So you just keep going. And now I want to talk about the home and vacations, because somebody was talking to me about this the other day, about being careful with the family budget and the family money, because you're part of this. You're guarding everything because it's yours too, and that is that you can create, if you can create a family, a vacation atmosphere at home, that means a place of comfort, a place of being able to be happy and relax, and you do this by creating in your home the things that you like somewhere else. And now we live out here in the country. It costs a great deal to go anywhere, and we can probably manage a day drive somewhere. And we don't like to spend the night when we go because we'd rather be in our own bed. And I know it's exciting for children to go somewhere else, but we've gotten where we'd rather be at home. And so what I've done is I've created areas in my home that make us feel like we are out or we're in a luxury place. I have a little coffee and tea station. I have created little seating areas and a library and a music room and just a writing area, things like that, and also create the colors and the atmosphere and the things that you admire and like somewhere else if you need to stay home. Children like variety too. They like to have rooms changed around. It's an adventure. So that's really important. So create the atmosphere you're looking for somewhere else. And I'm not against having holidays, but save a little money and keep your focus fixed on the tasks and the purpose and to accomplish things. Keep yourself focused inwardly on it, and don't give up hope. See, hope is all we have. And I want to also talk about, someone asked me please to talk about the empty nesters. Now, I don't know anybody, it's a shame that was ever named that, but I don't think any Christian actually named that empty nester. I don't know anybody whose children are gone who feel they have an empty nest because they come back and they bring more with them. So while they're gone, then you've got to hustle around and rush and get all the rooms ready for the next batch that is coming. So even if you have a period of a kind of a dry spell where no one calls, no one visits, you really need to use that time to redo your house, to get the things fixed that need to be fixed, redo the bedrooms, get new bedding, whatever it is you need, and get it fixed up, because this might be where they are going to have their vacation, is at your house. And then the other thing I'd like to say is go out and get new ideas. Get new ideas for your home and for your homemaking, and go through. This is a great time to go through everything. And if you don't, then you're going to end up like a lot of our parents and grandparents, where you get sick and there's tons of stuff that weren't gone through, old pictures and letters and things like that. It becomes a great burden on the generation beneath you, because they often are raising children. They have lots of things, that responsibility, and they don't need to be going through all your old stuff. So that's a great time to go through your stuff, get it categorized and labeled. And even I know one lady who has put the name, she's kept a notebook and she's put the name of the child and the grandchild and the thing that goes to them if she ever breaks up housekeeping or if she ever dies. That's a great thing to do if you have time to do that. So so be happy that your children are following you around. It's a great blessing. Be happy that they're clinging to you. And also you can oh, I remembered why I had written Elizabeth Bennet's name down on a previous video. I have words, I just write these words, but then I write them so fast and I can't read my writing. But I wrote Elizabeth Bennet's name down, and I don't know why, but now I know why. Because at the end of every video, I like to talk about people and how to work around them. How to work around them, especially if you have somebody that's giving you a problem, who doesn't really want you to be a homemaker, or who wants to argue, or who wants to just intimidate you in some way. Or maybe you've just got a friend or someone who's trying to aggravate you a little bit because you're a homemaker. And I remembered Elizabeth Bennet said, "My courage rises with every attempt to intimidate me." So you have to use these things, any kind of irritant, any kind of discouraging word. I always loved that song, Home, Home on the Range, where never is heard a discouraging word. Ladies, could you please remember that? Your home should not be a place full of discouraging words. You can express your disappointment in something, but you can't go around discouraging everyone, and don't let them discourage you. And remember, Elizabeth Bennets, she used it as a stepping stone for courage. So her courage rises every time someone tried to intimidate her. So when someone says something really cruel, don't let that knock you down, because that's what they're going to do. And even the Bible, I ran across a scripture that said that people would do that to you, especially if you're a Christian. And if more of us would learn that, then we would say, aha, this is the time when I have to summon up my courage. This is the time when I have to persevere. This is the time when I have to stick to something and not be discouraged or complain. So I also want to tell you a story. Oh, I wanted to report on the ladies' Bible class. We have a ladies' Bible class here every week, and it's at my house, and I live just a few steps away from the church building over there. It's kind of a storybook style life, isn't it? Take the little path down there to the church building every Sunday morning, and I go and unlock it, and I turn on the heat and the lights, and I put the sign out in the front, and take the bulletin over there that my husband has published, and the ladies' class used to be over there. But over the years, they have decided they like to come to my house better, which is the manse, the preacher's home. And I guess because I have better teacups. And so they decided they like it there better. And so they come to my house on Thursdays, and we have a ladies' Bible class. And years ago, we gave up having, workbooks and worksheets and things like that, and word studies and things like that, because invariably I would lose my workbook or my worksheet, or I would get lost or something, or somebody would not be there, and they would the whole workbook would be wasted because they'd missed so many classes they didn't really get to do them. Plus, workbooks were a problem because they'd have to go home and fill out all the blanks and fill in this and fill in that, and we did not want to send ladies home with a burden, with any more work to do. And we did not want them to think they couldn't come to class if they hadn't done their worksheets. So we decided, well, we'll just start at the beginning of the Bible and read a chapter every time we come together. And so over the years, we've read it through many times and had a wonderful time doing it. So we are on Colossians, and we read we don't always read the whole chapter. We will find where a subject has ended, where we think a subject has ended, and we will take turns reading the verses, and then while they're reading, they're supposed to think of what struck them, or what got their interest, what kind of thing got their interest. And so last week, and by the way, there are ladies who are kind of in the homemaking, Titus 2 belief, but don't believe we should have ladies' Bible classes. And I can't help it, because our ladies want to have it, and we're having it, and this is what I'm doing. So I wanted to read part of Colossians chapter 1, because this is part of what I'm talking about when I say Elizabeth Bennet said, "My courage rises with every attempt to intimidate me." It says, "Being strengthened with all power according to his glorious might, for all endurance and patience with joy." Have you ever thought about how thick that is with meaning? For all endurance and patience with joy. Well, we looked up the word endurance while they were there, and it meant keeping on with something without giving up, in spite of intimidation or in spite of discouragement. And there was an example that someone gave, was like walking in the rain to get home. You don't just stop and say, it's raining, I can't get home. You try to get home and you ignore it. You just get home, and you don't stop and have a meltdown. And so that's called endurance. And that's something you need to teach children about endurance. It talks about endurance and patience. Endurance and patience combined with joy. Can you imagine walking, trying to get home in the rain, and you're walking? You go for a walk, you're just going for a little walk, and it starts to rain. You don't have an umbrella, and you have to continue. It's like an athlete. They have to keep running. Let's say it's a race. They have to keep running, and they don't give up, and they have to endure. They have to endure a little stress, pain, but this says endurance and patience with joy. So that's pretty thick. You could study that. It's Colossians chapter 1, verse 11. You want to work on that and think about that. We had quite a discussion about it. All the ladies were interested in it and were wanting to give ideas. And we were looking up Greek words and meanings. Everybody had their own reference books. And so it really was enriching. And afterwards, of course, we have tea and we have lunch. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. And I'd like to come more often and report on what some of the ladies said about some of the stories they tell and some of the things that we talked about. So now I've been talking for about 40 minutes, and if I can go 10 more minutes, then I will have talked an hour, and maybe you have gotten your things folded, your dishes done, your floor swept. I'm so glad we have floors now instead of so many carpets, because those vacuums are so noisy. You couldn't talk to anybody on the phone, and you certainly couldn't listen to anything while you were working, and they were such a pain, weren't they? And so I'd rather sweep anyway. So now I wanted to discuss something that I don't know if any of you have watched this BBC series called Wives and Daughters. One of my most favorite things to watch. And whatever you may think of the author, I'm sure they reflected a lot of sayings and attitudes and beliefs of their time. And in Wives and Daughters, it's a story of a young woman named Molly who lives with her widowed father, and they have good friends called the Hamleys, and they have two sons. The Hamleys have two sons, Osborne and Roger. And Osborne was sent to college, and he was kind of the smart one of the family, who was the poet and who was very erudite and very educated. And Roger was more into the science, and he liked bees and bugs and studies of plants and things like that. And the family was the father was a gentleman farmer and would go to what we would call the stock show, where you go and you buy new cows and whatever it is you want, and go see some of the prized ones. And it takes place in England. And I just had my DNA done, and it was just not very interesting. It wasn't anything exotic. It was just British, British, and British. So my husband was more exotic than I was. There was like Greek and Spanish. And I mean, I always thought he looked in Italian. And but anyway, back to the story. It takes place in England, and I'm not English. I'm not British. I'm very, very American, and so and Oregonian, especially Oregonian. And he had this young man, Osborne, that was the educated one, the bookworm type. He went to the stock show with his father and his brother, and looking at cows. And he came home, and his mother asked him, "How was the show?" And he said, "Well," he said, "I'm afraid bullocks are not in my interest, or not in my line," or something like that. He much preferred writing poetry, I think. Well, the other day, so I like to tell a story also. This is my story for the day. Now, my family likes this story, and it's a recent one. Only happened a couple weeks ago. But I don't know if you will. But this will give you 10 more minutes to get some work done, and you'll have company. I can talk to you. I'd like to talk. I'm already thinking of future things I'd like to talk about as things are whirling through my head here, and so I wanted to make sure that I sometime talk about husbands and how to encourage them in in your role as a homemaker, how it affects them and how good it is for them. So I want to continue on this story. There are people who come to visit us sometimes, and they always want to come in and have a cup of tea. And once they know you're a tea person, they know where they can get a good spot of tea. So they call and say, we're coming over and we'll be there in an hour, and we want, to visit you. And so this couple comes, and her husband was hired years ago by the county. I don't know if you know what that is, like a borough. It's a section, and some countries don't have counties, but we have counties. And was hired by the county to inspect rebar. Now, rebar is reinforcement bar, and it's a little mesh, series of mesh strings, I guess you would call it, that go inside of a piece of concrete or a pipe to reinforce it to make it stronger. And he worked for the county, and he had to inspect rebar. So of course when he comes, and he's like in his 70s now, but he likes to talk about how he was an inspector, and he would go around and inspect public buildings and private buildings and inspect this rebar, and talk about how some people would try to get away with putting less in than was prescribed by the county to make the building safe. And I know whatever you say about all these codes that we have here, it's nice to know that they're not allowed to put up shacks that fall down and that will injure people and everything, that they really have these things for a reason, many of them. Now, some of them are a little bit overboard, but so he tells my husband and I how many inches. I was sure glad that I had tea there, because it's something to do. And then of course I always talk to you about how the inside of the cup has a flower in it, so I'm sitting there looking at the flower. Well, he's explaining this rebar and how many pieces per inch is required by the county code, to go in these pipes or go in a piece of cement or concrete. And so after an hour, they got up to go, and I'm telling you, I was just exhausted listening to these tiny little details about rebar. So after they left, I told Mr. S, I'm afraid rebar is not in my line. I'm afraid rebar is not in my interest. And so I thought, man, that was exhausting, listening to this guy talk about all his adventures when he was a rebar inspector. So I thought, that's just not my interest. I like to sew. I like to do, entertain and put on tea parties. I'm looking to see if those lights are shining yet. I don't know if they'll be flickering yet. The daylight takes a while to, around 7 or 8. It takes till 7 or 8 o'clock. It's only 5 minutes to 6. I have 5 more minutes to talk to you. So I decided, well, I need a little relief from this. I need to just kind of breathe down from this stress of listening to these tiny little details about rebar. So I thought, well, I'll get on the internet and I'll go on YouTube and I'll see what people are doing. And I like to go and see what my latest favorite lady that does pretty things, crafts or sews or just anything else. And I noticed there were some videos on President Trump, and I thought, well, he's always entertaining. I think I'll see what he's up to. And so I thought, well, this is exciting. He's at the border, I guess, in California, and he was inspecting the wall, which is made of these pipes. And so I thought, well, this is interesting. Let's see what he has to say. And he was busy telling every single detail of the rebar that went inside of these pipes and why it was better than any other kind. It was special. And I said, oh no. I never really expected that. I just didn't know that he really, I didn't understand the extent to which he understood these building materials. And he was telling what the quality was and what the grade was, and how many pieces of wire per inch it was. And I thought, rebar really is not in my line, but I seem to be running into it everywhere I go. So I thought you might enjoy that story, and if you didn't enjoy it, just ignore it and move on. And I want to talk just a little bit about how the men might come home from work. If you're a homemaker, you're minding your own business and you're just trying to get things done, but you don't realize that at work people put pressure on your husband, especially the young ones. They may find, it's raining out here, but I'm just going to stay here a little bit longer. They somehow, even though men don't like to talk a lot, especially in America, men don't talk very much. I find more talkative men in Australia and England, but the American men, you can't get 2 words out of them sometimes. But somehow at work, the co-workers find out that their wife is staying home, and they start to question them. Well, what does she do all day? Well, how can you make it on that salary? Well, I bet you won't be going on a very good vacation if she doesn't get to work. And so he may come home a bit beaten down and despondent about it and start putting a little pressure on his wife and be a little critical of her and want her to get a job outside the home. And so here's where you have to be careful. You have to understand that it might not be him telling you this. It might be a coworker telling you through him. You've got to be very, very careful about that. We can talk more about that later. It's starting to rain and I don't see the candles flickering. I was hoping that it would get dark and not be raining, and I'd like to stay with you a little bit longer, but I think that I'm going to have to say goodbye in a few minutes. And I hope that you got something done. I hope you have great success. Please write to me. Please put a comment on my blog and let me know if this is helping at all. And I also like to talk to you in the future about different things pertaining to being a preacher's wife. So if you're a young preacher's wife, you might want to listen, because I would like to show you about how to maintain your home life and your privacy and have great success in your own life while you might be involved in a church. And even if you're not a preacher's wife, I think it's really important that we talk about some of these things, and I hope that I can be of some help now that I'm older and wiser. I could probably give you a few hints and tell you a couple of things that I wish I hadn't done and a couple of things that I wish that I had. And so the rain is falling down and it's getting all over my computer, so I'm going to say goodbye. God bless you, and please leave me a comment, because that just gives me life, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.